Don't go, she whispered, her hand trembling against his. Outside, the world waited. Danger, secrets, and a love neither expected. One choice could change everything. Will Michael listen, or will it be too late? Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to Ms. Love Stories channel, the place where love, drama, and unforgettable moments come alive. I'm so thrilled you're here, ready to dive into stories that will make your heart race, bring tears, and leave you believing in the power of love. Before we begin, I want to get to know all of you. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from, because in the next video, I'll give a special shout out to some of you amazing viewers from around the world. I can't wait to see how far our love story family reaches. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, so you never miss a single emotional journey. Get ready to feel, laugh, cry, and fall in love all over again, because every story we share here is for you. Now, the story begins. Rose. Michael's penthouse suite overlooked the city, lights glittering like distant promises he could never touch. He leaned against the floor-to-ceiling window, a crystal tumbler of whiskey trembling slightly in his hand. The phone had rung 3 times, each buzz a reminder of the world he ruled, but could never belong to. His office had taught him power, money, and control, but loneliness had become a permanent tenant. He clenched his jaw, forcing the ache in his chest to the background. Another board meeting tomorrow, another charity gala, another night pretending life outside numbers and deals didn't exist. The echo of laughter from the hotel lobby drifted up. Something about it made his chest tighten. Not anger, not envy, just an unfamiliar pang. The kind that whispered of connection he refused to chase. He shook his head and poured another sip, ignoring the sudden chill brushing against his spine. Downstairs, Mirabelle balanced trays with practiced ease, her eyes scanning guests for signs of hurry, stress, or secrets. She had learned to read people in the quiet spaces between words. The subtle tremor in a hand, a too-quick glance, the stiffness of a smile forced to perfection. When Michael walked in earlier, a storm of presence followed him. Tall, impeccable, commanding, but there was a loneliness there that echoed her own, though they were strangers. Something about him whispered danger, but the kind that made her heart thrum instead of retreat. A guest's complaint distracted her, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he noticed her too. The kind of awareness that made her forget to breathe for a second. A dangerous, intoxicating awareness. Michael finally descended to the lobby, the hotel's soft lighting reflecting off his crisp suit. His gaze caught Mirabelle's, just for a heartbeat, but it was enough. The air between them seemed charged, though neither spoke. A shadow moved near the entrance. Michael's instincts sharpened. Someone was waiting outside, unseen but imminent. Mirabelle noticed his stiffening, the way his fingers clenched a hidden stress. She leaned in, voice low. "Don't go, they're waiting outside." The words hovered between them, heavy, urgent. Michael's eyes flickered, disbelief and curiosity warring. Mirabelle's pulse quickened, not just fear, but something deeper she couldn't name. Michael's gaze didn't leave Mirabelle. Her warning lingered in the air, heavy and impossible to ignore. He wanted to ask who was waiting, why she seemed so certain, but the words caught in his throat. Something about her voice, calm yet urgent, made him hesitate. He took a slow step back, trying to process the strange collision of danger and curiosity that her presence had stirred. Mirabelle watched him, her hands still poised over the tray, though the weight of the moment pressed against her chest. She had no right to involve herself in a man's life, especially someone like Michael. Yet instinct, and something she couldn't name, pulled her closer. The world outside was dangerous, yes, but the danger inside the lobby, in the space between them, was far more potent. Michael walked toward the elevator, each step deliberate, measured. Every instinct in his body screamed to flee, to leave before he became entangled in someone else's life. But a part of him, stubborn and unwilling to admit it, wanted to know why this ordinary woman's words had shaken him more than any boardroom challenge ever could. The elevator doors slid open with a soft ding, and he hesitated for a heartbeat before entering. Mirabelle's eyes followed him, unable to tear away, a mixture of dread and fascination tightening her chest. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of vulnerability they both tried to hide. Outside, the city pulsed with indifferent life. The streets glimmered under streetlights, Cars honking in the distance, a world moving fast, unaware of the quiet collision unfolding in a hotel lobby. Michael's fingers clenched the edge of the elevator handrail. The warning had been clear. Someone or something was waiting. And yet he couldn't shake the sense that leaving now would cost him more than he could calculate. Mirabelle adjusted her tray, forcing herself to focus on the guests around her. But her thoughts kept returning to the tall man in the suit, the tension coiled in his frame, and the fleeting moment when their eyes had met. She didn't know his name. She didn't know his story. And yet, already, she felt as if she had glimpsed a piece of something broken inside him. A reflection of the quiet ache she carried herself. Michael's mind raced. Who were they waiting for? Why had she warned him? Questions collided with instincts, leaving him in a strange limbo between caution and curiosity. The elevator doors closed with a soft thud, cutting off his view of her, but not the memory of her warning, not the echo of her words in his chest. He leaned against the polished wall, taking a slow breath, trying to steady himself. The city's lights blurred outside the glass as his thoughts spun. Something told him this night would not end quietly. Something told him the choice to heed or ignore. Her warning could change everything. And Mirabelle, watching from across the lobby, felt it too. A sense that their paths were meant to collide. A force neither could resist, and a story far bigger than either had imagined was about to unfold. The next evening, the hotel's ballroom was alive with soft music and muted chatter. Michael had arrived early, needing to check the arrangements for a high-profile charity gala. Even here, amidst the glittering chandeliers and polished floors, his mind kept returning to the lobby, to the warning, to the strange pull he felt toward the woman he didn't even know. Mirabelle moved through the crowded room carrying drinks for the guests, careful not to draw attention to herself. Yet her eyes kept darting toward the grand staircase, sensing him before she saw him. He stood there, framed by the cascading lights, commanding the room without trying. Every step he took seemed precise, controlled. Yet there was an undeniable tension in his shoulders. She could almost see the worry coiled tightly beneath the surface. Their eyes met across the room again, a silent acknowledgement this time. And a small, involuntary shiver ran down Mirabelle's spine. Michael's hand twitched as though he wanted to approach, but caution held him back. He could still hear the echo of her warning. "Don't go, they're waiting outside." Her words had left him unsettled, but also aware of something else, something he couldn't name. A dangerous curiosity, a spark that refused to die. The crowd shifted, laughter ringing through the ballroom, but in that space between them, time seemed to slow. Michael took a step, then stopped, unsure whether to confront the magnetic tension drawing him forward or retreat into the safety of his carefully constructed world. Mirabelle felt it too, a pull she had never experienced with a stranger. And for a moment, the world of trays, guests, and polished floors fell away. A sudden commotion at the entrance drew Michael's attention. A man in a dark coat scanning the room, lingering near the doorway, too deliberate to be casual. His heart tightened. The warning had been more than instinct. Danger was real, waiting just outside, and now he saw it with his own eyes. Mirabelle noticed his gaze shift, the flicker of recognition and fear crossing his features. She knew then she could not remain a bystander. She stepped closer, letting her voice carry just enough over the music. "Stay close. Don't let him see you alone." Michael's jaw tightened. Her presence was both a reassurance and a puzzle, and despite the fear twisting in his gut, he found himself grateful she was there. For the first time in years, he did not feel entirely in control, and yet he did not recoil. They moved through the crowd together, a silent alliance forming between them. Every glance, every step, hinted at the inevitability of what was coming. Neither knew it yet, but the night was far from ordinary, and the moment they had both been waiting for, the collision of danger, secrets, and unexpected connection, was approaching fast. And as they reached the edge of the ballroom near the grand doors, both Michael and Mirabelle sensed that life, as they knew it, was about to change forever. The grand doors of the ballroom suddenly swung open, and a cold gust of wind swept through the room. The music stuttered, and the chatter of guests turned into murmurs of confusion. Michael's eyes snapped toward the entrance. There, silhouetted against the night, were figures moving with deliberate menace, 3 men in dark coats, their intentions unmistakable. Mirabelle's grip on his arm tightened, small but urgent. "They're here," she whispered, her voice taut with fear. "Now." Michael's heart raced. Instinct screamed at him to act, to retreat, to vanish, but something held him in place. His mind raced through possibilities, each one darker than the last. These men were no ordinary intruders. He could feel it in the tension in the air, the deliberate way they scanned the room. Mirabelle glanced around, assessing the crowd, calculating. "We need to move. Now." She led him toward the side exit, weaving between guests who were oblivious to the danger closing in. Michael followed, relying on her guidance. A strange trust forming in an instant that surprised him. The men had spotted them. A low, threatening murmur traveled through the group as they quickened their pace. Michael's pulse hammered in his ears. He wanted to protect himself first, but seeing Mirabelle's calm determination, her eyes fixed on him with quiet courage, something inside him shifted. He wasn't just running for his life. He was running to keep her safe. Outside, the night air was sharper than expected. Michael pressed himself against the building's wall, trying to catch his breath, but the men were relentless. Their steps echoed in the empty alley, growing louder, closer. Mirabelle's hand was still in his, small yet strong, and he couldn't help but notice how natural it felt to follow her lead, as if they had known each other for years. Suddenly, one of the men lunged forward, forcing Michael to react. Instinct overrode caution. He grabbed the man's wrist, twisting it with precision born of necessity. Mirabelle stepped back, her eyes wide, but her trust in him never wavered. "They'll keep coming," she said quietly. "We need to get inside." They darted into the nearest service entrance, the muffled sounds of chaos fading behind them. The alley was narrow, claustrophobic, and the threat felt as close as their own racing hearts. Michael finally stopped breathing hard, the adrenaline coursing through him. He turned to Mirabelle, who was catching her breath, her face pale but resolute. You saved me," he said, voice low, still incredulous. "I don't even know your name." "Mirabelle," she replied softly. "And you should be thanking me for warning you. I've been watching you all night." Michael blinked, the words sinking in. She had noticed him, observed him, and acted when others wouldn't. Something in her courage stirred something long dormant in him. A willingness to trust, to rely on someone else. He looked back toward the street. The danger was still there, waiting in the shadows, but for the first time, he felt something else, connection. Something fragile, uncertain but undeniable. And in that fleeting moment, with the city's lights glimmering behind her and the cold air between them, Michael realized that this night was no ordinary encounter. It was the beginning of a story that neither of them could have anticipated. Mirabelle's hand remained in his, grounding him. He allowed himself a fleeting smile. And for the first time in a long while, Michael felt the possibility of hope, even in the midst of danger. Outside, the threat lingered, but inside, a spark had been ignited. Have you ever trusted someone you barely knew in a moment of danger? Comment below how you think you'd react. After the chaos of the alley, Michael and Mirabelle found themselves in a quiet side corridor behind the hotel. The immediate threat had vanished, but the adrenaline still pulsed through their veins, leaving each painfully aware of the other. Michael's chest tightened, not from danger, but from something far more complicated. The pull he felt toward her, and the vulnerability it demanded. He stepped back subtly, his body creating distance. "We shouldn't linger here," he said, his voice firm, trying to regain control. "It's over. You warned me. That's enough." Mirabelle's grip on the tray she had picked up earlier loosened. "It's not over," she whispered, her gaze meeting his. "I know what I saw. And I know you didn't just escape by luck." Michael shook his head, unwilling to confront the truth that her words stirred. "I don't need anyone, especially not someone I barely know, telling me what to do," he said, the pride in his voice barely masking the unease twisting inside him. Mirabelle's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she stepped back as well, retreating into the shadows of the corridor. She wanted to press the connection, to reach out, but the rational part of her, the part that had survived by caution, warned her to keep distance. The silence between them was thick, heavy with unsaid words. Both felt the pull, the magnetic tension, yet fear and pride held them back. Michael's hand itched to reach for her, to ask her to stay, but he forced it to his side. Vulnerability had never been his ally. He knew it now more than ever. Outside the hotel, the city moved on as if nothing had happened. The danger had vanished from sight, but the emotional storm inside the lobby corridor raged on. Michael's mind replayed the moment of the men lunging, the sharp fear, and the strange comfort of Mirabelle's presence. He hated how much he wanted to pull closer, to confide, to trust, but he refused. Mirabelle walked to the service elevator, trying to focus on her duties. Her heart ached, torn between her instincts to protect and the understanding that the man she had just helped would never allow himself to be vulnerable. Yet, deep down, she knew that the connection they had felt in that brief encounter would not fade so easily. Michael, alone in the corridor, pressed his palm against the wall, closing his eyes. His mind screamed at him to run, to retreat into the safety of control, solitude, and walls built high over years. But part of him, the part that had felt Mirabelle's warning as both danger and invitation, was unwilling to leave things unresolved. He clenched his jaw, knowing that this resistance, this denial, was only postponing what the night had already begun. As they moved separately back into the hotel's main areas, neither spoke of the moment. The tension lingered like smoke in the air, unacknowledged yet undeniable. Both sensed the inevitability. Paths would cross again. And when they did, the emotional storm brewing between them would demand more than denial. Have you ever ignored a feeling you couldn't explain? Comment below. Would you retreat or follow your instincts? The following evening, the hotel was swarming with preparations for a VIP gala. Michael had been called back to oversee last-minute arrangements, and Mirabelle was assigned to serve in the same section she had been during the previous night's chaos. Fate, it seemed, had a way of making the inevitable unavoidable. As Michael inspected the setup for the main hall, a sudden alarm blared from the kitchen. Smoke had triggered the sprinklers, forcing guests and staff to evacuate temporarily into the hotel's back corridors. Panic and confusion filled the halls, and in that chaotic swirl, Michael and Mirabelle found themselves pressed together against the wall near the service elevator. "Stay close," Mirabelle said, her voice steady but low. She pressed herself next to him, guiding him away from the throng of startled staff and guests. Michael's first instinct was to resist. He had always thrived on control, and now he was being guided by someone he barely knew, someone who should have been insignificant. Yet the feel of her hand on his arm, firm but gentle, grounded him in a way that surprised him. For the first time, he allowed himself to follow without questioning. They moved through the narrow service corridor, the chaos behind them growing. Water dripped from the sprinklers, the air smelled faintly of smoke, and the echo of hurried footsteps filled the hall. In that forced proximity, the world outside, the danger, the unknown, felt both distant and urgent. Mirabelle glanced at him, her eyes catching the faint light above the ceiling panels. "You don't have to pretend," she said softly. "I can see it, the part you hide from everyone else." Michael hesitated, words caught in his throat. No one had ever seen that part of him. Not in meetings, not in boardrooms, not even in the rare moments of quiet at the penthouse. And yet, here she was reading him like an open book, challenging him in the quietest, most disarming way. He finally spoke, his voice low, almost reluctant. Why do you care?" Mirabelle shrugged slightly, a ghost of a smile brushing her lips. "I don't know if I do, but I can't ignore it either." The hallway opened into a small, dimly lit storage area, and they stepped inside for a moment of refuge. The hum of sprinklers was loud, water dripping steadily onto the tiled floor, but for a brief pause, there was silence. They were pressed close together, breaths mingling, tension thick and undeniable. Michael's mind raced, but the tension was no longer just fear, it was something new. Connection, intrigue, desire, a strange, unfamiliar vulnerability. And for Mirabelle, who had spent her life observing and protecting, there was a thrill in the fact that she was no longer the one keeping distance. He was letting her in, however reluctantly. The chaos of the hotel faded into background noise. The world outside might be dangerous, uncertain, and waiting, but in that forced proximity, Michael and Mirabelle discovered an unspoken truth. Some connections could not be denied, no matter how much pride, fear, or hesitation stood in the way. And as they stood there, side by side in the small storage room. Both understood without saying it that this night had already changed them, forever. Later that night, after the hotel's chaos had settled, Michael found himself in the quiet of the empty ballroom. The soft glow of chandeliers reflected in the polished floors, but his mind was anything but calm. The night's events, the warning, the danger, Mirabelle's presence, had stirred something in him that he hadn't felt in years. Uncertainty, vulnerability, and a strange need for connection. Mirabelle appeared at the edge of the room, carrying a small notebook she had used to note the incident with the intruders. "I didn't mean to drag you into all this," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. I've just seen too many things go wrong, people hurt, and I can't stay silent when danger is near." Michael studied her, noting the calm determination in her voice. "Why me?" he asked. "Why did you warn me? You barely know me." She hesitated, then took a step closer, her voice quieter. "Because I've seen what happens when people ignore their instincts. And because I know what it feels like to be powerless." Her fingers clenched the notebook tightly, and for a moment, her composure faltered. "I lost someone once, someone I loved. And I won't watch that happen again, not if I can prevent it." Michael's expression softened. He had always believed strength meant control, power, and isolation. But hearing Mirabelle speak of loss, of love, and of fear shattered the walls he had built around himself. In that moment, he realized that she had been carrying her own pain just as he had been carrying his. I understand," he admitted, his voice low. "I've spent my life building walls around myself too. Trust doesn't come easily. Love, it's a risk I stopped taking a long time ago." Mirabelle nodded, her gaze steady. "And yet here we are, both risking it without fully realizing it." A pause settled between them, the quiet of the empty ballroom filling the space with weight. Michael looked down at the polished floor, then back at her. "Tell me about him," he said finally, gesturing toward her words, her past. She hesitated, but the trust in his eyes nudged her forward. "He was everything. My first love. I thought we'd have a life together. But I was naive and I lost him. I lost him because I didn't speak up, because I didn't act when I should have. I've carried that regret every day since." Michael's chest tightened. Her story mirrored the loneliness and regret he had buried beneath success and power. I lost someone too," he confessed, the words foreign on his tongue. "Someone I should have held on to, but I let pride and fear take over. I've tried to fill the void with money, work. Nothing works. Nothing until now." Mirabelle's eyes softened, a subtle warmth crossing her features. Maybe we don't have to carry it alone anymore." Michael nodded slowly, the walls around his heart shifting ever so slightly. The night's events, the danger, the forced proximity. They had peeled away layers of pretense, revealing not just fear, but hope. And in that fragile moment, standing together in the quiet aftermath, both understood that their connection was no accident. It was the beginning of something that could heal old wounds, if they dared to let it. The following morning, the hotel was quiet. Guests had left, leaving only the soft hum of maintenance and the distant echo of the city outside. Michael sat alone in the executive lounge, staring at his untouched coffee. The events of the previous night, Mirabelle's warning, the intruders, and the raw honesty they had shared, kept replaying in his mind. The soft click of heels made him look up. Mirabelle stepped inside, tray in hand, carrying a simple breakfast. "I thought you could use some food," she said, her voice light but caring. "It's not much," but she trailed off, setting the tray beside him. Michael watched her, noticing the small, deliberate gestures she made. How she straightened her posture when she thought no one was looking. How her hands were steady despite everything she had endured. "Thank you," he said quietly, almost as if saying it aloud made the world feel more real. They sat together in an easy silence at first. No urgent danger, no chaos. Just the quiet space that allowed them to breathe. And in that breathing space, a subtle warmth began to grow, filling cracks they had both thought were permanent. "You really saw me last night," Michael said after a while, his voice hesitant. "Not the CEO, not the public image. You saw me." Mirabelle smiled faintly. "I didn't have to look far. People like you leave traces, even if they don't know it. And honestly, I think I've been waiting to see someone like you in that light." Michael chuckled softly, the sound more relaxed than he had expected. Waiting or hoping? Maybe both, she admitted, her eyes meeting his with quiet honesty. I don't usually trust strangers. But something about you made me. I don't know, willing to. For the first time in years, Michael let himself relax in someone else's presence. He told her small things, about the solitude he had lived with, the weight of responsibility, the regrets he carried. Mirabelle shared more about her past too. Not just the heartbreak she had revealed last night, but also the resilience that had shaped her. As the morning sunlight filtered through the windows, the room seemed warmer, softer. Laughter slipped between them as they recounted small, almost mundane memories. Childhood mistakes, forgotten dreams, and silly moments that lightened the heaviness between them. It was not perfection. It was fragile. But it was real. And in that fragility, they found something they had both longed for. Safety, understanding, and a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, they were no longer alone in facing the world. Finally, Michael leaned back, a small smile tugging at his lips. I didn't think I'd ever feel this calm with someone else. Especially not someone I barely know. Mirabelle tilted her head, the corners of her mouth lifting in a gentle smile. Life has a funny way of surprising you, she said softly. Maybe some surprises are meant to be shared. For the first time, they didn't pretend. They didn't hide. And for a fleeting, perfect moment, the past's wounds and the night's dangers faded, leaving only the beginning of something real. A bond neither had expected, but both needed more than they could admit. The gala was in full swing. Glittering chandeliers cast their golden glow across the ballroom, laughter and music filling every corner. Guests mingled, champagne glasses clinked, and the night appeared flawless from the outside. But for Michael and Mirabelle, the fragile calm they had built over the last 2 days was about to crack. Michael had stepped away for a moment to deal with a sudden business matter. When he returned, he spotted Mirabelle speaking with another guest, a man he didn't recognize. The way Mirabelle laughed, relaxed and confident, felt like a knife twisting in his chest. His mind raced, assumptions building faster than reason could stop them. He approached, voice clipped. Who's he? Mirabelle turned, startled. Michael. Oh, he's just a colleague from work. I was only explaining the kitchen layout to him. Why? Michael's jaw tightened and his eyes hardened. Explaining the kitchen layout, really? That's all. His tone was sharper than he intended, but the surge of insecurity and fear of losing her control left him no choice. Mirabelle's brow furrowed, hurt flashing across her face. You don't trust me? She asked, disbelief lacing her words. After everything, after last night? It's not that, Michael stammered, struggling to rein in the storm inside him. His voice trailed off as doubt and jealousy collided in a chaotic storm. Mirabelle stepped back, her hands trembling slightly. You don't get to decide what I do or who I speak to. I warned you. I trusted you, Michael. And now? Her voice broke, leaving the unspoken weight of betrayal hanging in the air. Before he could respond, one of the gala staff rushed past, signaling an emergency. A minor fire had broken out in the kitchen. Chaos erupted. Guests screamed, waiters ran, and the sprinklers came to life. In the confusion, Mirabelle was pulled away by another staff member, leaving Michael frozen in the center of the storm. He ran to the edge of the ballroom, heart pounding, searching desperately for her. The sight of her being guided away, safe but distant, left him hollow. Anger, fear, and helplessness twisted in his chest. For the first time, he realized that his pride and hesitation could cost him more than discomfort. It could cost him the one person who had cut through his defenses. Outside, the night air was thick with smoke and chaos, and Michael stood alone, watching the room that had once felt like the beginning of something new crumble into panic and distance. He had lost control, and with it, the fragile bond he had begun to trust. Mirabelle, safe behind the staff, felt her own heart ache. The look in Michael's eyes, misunderstanding, anger, and hurt, burned deeper than any threat outside. She realized then that danger wasn't just external. It could also live in the fragile human heart, where pride and fear could destroy connection faster than any physical threat. As the night settled and the fire was brought under control, both of them retreated to separate corners of the hotel, wounded not by the chaos around them, but by the chasm that had suddenly opened between them. The bond they had started to form now lay in ruins, shattered by a mix of misunderstanding, jealousy, and the fear of vulnerability. And in that silence, both Michael and Mirabelle wondered if what had begun so promisingly could survive the night, or if it had already been lost forever. The morning after the gala, the hotel was quiet, almost eerily so. Michael sat alone in his penthouse, staring out at the city skyline. The lights twinkled as if mocking him, a reminder that life went on outside while his heart remained tangled in confusion. He replayed the events of the previous night. The misunderstanding with Mirabelle, the fire and the silent hurt in her eyes. He clenched his fists, the tension in his chest unbearable. Pride battled longing, fear battled honesty. For so long, Michael had relied on control, on calculated decisions and walls around his heart. But now, faced with the possibility of losing Mirabelle, perhaps forever, he realized that control meant nothing if it cost him connection, trust, or love. Meanwhile, Mirabelle walked through the empty lobby, her tray in hand but her mind elsewhere. She replayed the moment Michael had approached her at the gala, the sharpness in his tone, and the look in his eyes when he misunderstood her intentions. Pain and disappointment churned inside her. She wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but another part of her hesitated. Vulnerability was dangerous, yet staying silent felt just as risky. Hours passed, both trapped in their own worlds of doubt and reflection. Finally, Michael stood, his decision weighing heavily on him. He would not let pride dictate the end of something that had already become vital. He needed to reach her, to admit not just the misunderstanding, but the fear and the hope that had taken root in his heart. He found her near the hotel cafe, quietly arranging leftover trays. She looked up, startled, as he approached. "Mirabelle," he said, voice low but steady. I need to explain. I was wrong. I let pride get in the way, and I misread everything. I don't want to lose you because I couldn't trust you." Mirabelle's eyes softened, though guardedness lingered. "Michael, words are easy. Actions are harder." He stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "Then let me prove it. I don't want to pretend anymore. I don't want to hide. I've been alone for too long, and I can't keep running from something real when it's standing right in front of me." For a long moment neither spoke. The hotel around them seemed to fade, leaving only the tension and possibility between them. Finally, Mirabelle took a deep breath and held out her hand. "Then show me," she said, her voice gentle but firm. Michael grasped her hand, the warmth of her skin anchoring him. In that touch, they both felt the weight of choice lifted. The choice to remain proud and distant, or to embrace vulnerability and trust. Both had been scared, both had been wounded, but both now understood that the risk of love was worth more than the fear of loss. As they stood together, hands intertwined, Michael whispered, almost to himself, "I won't let you go this time." Mirabelle's eyes glimmered with unshed tears. "And I won't let you push me away either." In that quiet, suspended moment, the walls they had built around themselves began to crumble. Pride and fear were no match for the connection they had forged. And for the first time, both understood that the choice to be vulnerable, to trust, and to love could lead to something far greater than either had imagined. The city skyline shimmered under the soft glow of twilight, painting the streets in gold and violet. Michael walked through the quiet hotel lobby, his mind steady for the first time in days. He knew where he needed to go. Every step echoed with purpose, every heartbeat resonating with hope and resolve. Mirabelle was in the small lounge near the hotel's garden, arranging flowers for the evening shift. The air smelled of roses and faintly of freshly brewed coffee. She felt calm yet alert, sensing that something significant was about to happen. The tension from the past nights, the danger, the misunderstanding, the fear, had given way to anticipation. She knew the moment of truth was near. Michael approached her slowly, hands unclenched, eyes open and honest. "Mirabelle," he said softly. She turned, and their eyes met, each seeing the reflection of the other's journey. Loneliness, fear, and now courage. He knelt slightly, not as a display of submission, but as a gesture of sincerity. "I can't change the past, the walls I built, or the moments I let slip away. But I can be here now fully with you. If you'll let me." Mirabelle's breath caught. She saw the raw honesty in him, the vulnerability he had never shared with anyone else. She felt her own defenses crumble, replaced by trust and the undeniable pull that had been growing since their first encounter. "I've been scared," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Scared to let anyone in again. But I also know that some connections aren't meant to be ignored." Michael reached for her hand, entwining his fingers with hers. The simple touch was electric, grounding, and healing all at once. "Then don't run from it." "From us," he whispered. For a long moment, the world outside, the city, the hotel, the danger, faded. There was only the quiet understanding between them, a recognition that what had begun with fear and uncertainty had grown into something profound. Trust, intimacy, and the possibility of love at last. Mirabelle smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. "Then let's start again," she said softly. Michael pulled her gently into a hug, the weight of past loneliness lifting as they held each other. "Yes," he murmured. "From here, everything changes." Outside the hotel, the night was calm. The danger that had once loomed was gone, replaced by the quiet promise of tomorrow. Inside, two hearts that had once been guarded, wary, and broken found their rhythm in unison. They stood together, hands clasped, eyes locked, knowing that their journey was only beginning. The city sparkled around them, but the real light, warm, steady, enduring, was the bond they had chosen to nurture, forged through fear, misunderstanding, and finally courage. In the stillness, Michael whispered once more, almost as a vow, "I won't let go." And Mirabelle, with a gentle smile and a heartbeat in sync with his, replied, "Nor will I." The night carried them forward, not as two strangers, but as two souls who had discovered love in the most unexpected way, proving that sometimes, the greatest risks bring the deepest rewards. Have you ever taken a risk for someone you barely knew and found something life-changing? Share your story in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. Your time, your support, and your presence here mean more than words can say. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or kept you watching, please make sure to subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss a new upload. Until next time, stay blessed, stay strong, and keep believing in love. See you in the next story.